Okay. Hello and welcome to our first ever Janette TV Instagram live short series featuring book authors, speakers, coaches, consultants, and small business owners. Today I'm joined by Helen Hirsh Spence. She is an entrepreneur in her 60s. She's here to tell us how she made that change, leaving the corporate world and leadership education world behind after facing ageism. Welcome, Helen, to JTV Instagram Live Short.
Thanks for
So,
the invitation.
Helen, how were you able to make this transition? You were noticing things going on, and you felt this ageism against you, which is a very important topic that I'd like to delve into and talk about how your experiences affect not only you, but how you can take them forward to empower other women or other people in their 60s to have what I might call a second career or a business. How were you able to do that?
Thanks. I'm sorry I interrupted you. Thanks for the invitation to be here, Janette. Um, well, it was a long path, and it was curvy because I stopped working. I was a head of an all-girls school, and it was actually in my late 50s that I stopped working in that career, and I decided that I was going to travel the world, but I was going to do it voluntarily. And so that's what I did. I was chairing boards such as the Jane Goodall Institute, all of which was fantastic. I went all over the world. And it was in my mid 60s that I got a little bit frustrated and thought, I haven't seen the end of all the projects I've been involved with. I have energy and interest in doing more than that. At the same time, I was experiencing a feeling of irrelevance and invisibility and didn't know what that was. I spoke with other friends of mine and colleagues who said, well, I'm feeling similarly, and I don't know why, because I've had a pretty full career, no reason why I should feel this way. And it wasn't until I was exposed to a podcast that was describing just what I was experiencing, and that was internalized ageism. So in other words, it was ageism that was self-directed. I had internalized all these negative messages about growing older, and it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. In other words, I thought that I was over the hill or, past my prime to start something new. And when I recognized what it was and started doing research, I realized this is affecting tons of women who are aging. They could be in their 50s, they could be in their 60s, they could even be in their 40s. But the reality is it's a topic that isn't talked about. And therefore, I decided to start a social enterprise. I was in my late 60s at the time. And that's what happened. I started the
Well, it's a niche consultancy
that's right.
that deals with people in their 60s, but you're talking now about what you went through and some of the things that you identified with. What about what's your message for others? Others in this boat. What are some of the signs they might be looking for that would be triggers for them, and how could they take that and turn it into a business like you have?
Well, I mean, I chose, first of all, it's not only for women or men in their 60s, it's also for younger women, because it's in the late 40s that most women are starting to experience what's known as gendered ageism. So if they're on the job and if somebody starts saying to them, oh, you only have a few more years to go, things like that are actually ageist because they're implying that you should do something according to a chronological timeline. The reality is that we're all living much, much longer than we ever did before. Our average lifespan is about 82. When we started talking about retirement and so on at age 65, the average lifespan was 62. So these are all outdated notions from the 20th century. But in the workplace in particular and society in general hasn't changed that paradigm. They haven't shifted thinking about growing older. The reality is this generation of older adults, and it'll be true all the way through, are the best educated, the most technologically savvy, and they're the healthiest of any generation recorded in history. These are the older adults. And that's just going to continue because lifespans are expanding. So other things they
But
can look.
how can someone take like you, and this is all true, what you're saying is all true, but I want to know, and my viewers want to know, who are listening, who may be in this very same position that you're in, or about to approach it. Maybe they're in their 40s, maybe they're in specific industries. For example, I'm in the media industry, and
Mhm.
what you're saying is very true of the media industry. We often get our expiration date around 40, 45. But
Right.
what you're saying is we have a wealth of knowledge, expertise, and experiences. So how can we capitalize on that the same way that you did? How can we take something from our years of employment, if that's the route that we have? Not everybody's coming from years of employment. Some people are also coming from other businesses and maybe want to become a consultant because they do have a wealth of knowledge. How can we take those tools in our toolbox and bring them forth to start a business or consultancy firm in the same way that you started yours?
Well, it's hard to answer that specific question because I am looking at, a special niche market, which is the older generation. But the same thing would apply to anyone really at any age. I looked at what I was passionate about. That's the first step. What do you care about? What do you care about enough to invest your time, energy, and resources in? So that's the first thing they have to do. And many people, even though they're working full time, they may have a side hustle or side interest, whether it's painting or whatever. There are platforms where you can get tons of information about entrepreneurship, but it doesn't necessarily help you as an individual decide whether or not this is for you. You really need to understand you have to do a risk analysis. If you're going to depend on this for your life moving forward, and that was not my case. I was privileged enough to have a pension. So I had the liberty of exploring for a longer period of time and then investing in something that I really cared about to make it into a legitimate business. And it takes time. It takes time to build credibility. It takes time to be, legitimized. And so all of those factors perhaps need to be considered by anyone who is thinking about it. But it's a great way, I think, of dealing with some of the ageism that especially women are experiencing as they enter their 50s in particular.
Okay, so a couple of things. You mentioned niching, which you did yourself. You've niched it. The name of your business, if you'll share it with us, is it's over 60.
Top
You
60
work
over
with,
60. Yeah,
yeah, top 60 over 60. So it's a niche. So you were saying that that might be one area to look at. Obviously, to pace it out, your expectations on how to derive clients, marketing, sales, going to where you can get help and resources to help you develop a business because you will be running a business, but to focus also on what you're passionate about, which
absolutely.
is great. Often, at any age, entrepreneurs do that too. As for the ageism, what are some of the suggestions you have or tips that you could share that might help someone who's in a position where they're going to get let go, or they're getting pretty close to that, or pretty close to retirement? Uh, Maybe some things that they could do, or how coping mechanisms, um, maybe even legal solutions, right? Because is being let go because you're 50 or 55 even legal? Like,
No.
is there something? No, I didn't think so. So, what are some of the tips or coping mechanisms you could share with us for people who are in that boat?
First of all, I just want to say it isn't legal, and there are tons of rights that you have, but it's extremely difficult to prove because they can say that they're restructuring this, that, and the other thing. And companies and businesses are constantly coming up with, we're downsizing, we had to get rid of blah, blah, blah. So even though there are legal channels, it usually doesn't help very much. But you can do a couple of things. And I think everybody, when they hit a certain age, like 50 or so, they should start thinking about what is the next phase of my life going to look like? because it's not the learn, earn, retire scenario that we grew up with, or many of us grew up with. It's more like a portfolio career that we're looking at. We have a whole new map of life, and you have to start thinking differently about what age represents. It's just a stage in your life. And so therefore, and you're going to live longer. You can't play tennis or pickleball for 40 years when you retire. You need to do something. You might be able to, but you won't live long. All the research says you need to stay active physically and mentally, socially engaged, continue learning. So those are, and the biggest thing, Janette, is find purpose in your life. So when you find a purpose, that's really the easiest way. And that's what I mean. It could be your passion, it could be anything. But if your purpose is to share your expertise with accounting, for instance, all the more power to you if you've got the credentials and everything. That would be easy, especially if you've got that background. But you really need to prepare for it. You've got to think differently. You need to think beyond 60, 65, because it's no longer the end point. Just because it's still considered an age for retirement, it's an antiquated notion, and it's probably going to change. Besides, pensions don't exist the way they used to. When I went through, a work life, people have, gig careers now, precarious jobs, whatever you want to call it. Nobody has the financial, background or fortitude that my generation had. Very rarely do you have it.
And we need to be prepared for that for sure. And we are nearing the end of the interview, so I want to give you a chance to mention two things. First of all, you do podcasting, you do courses, you have a book. Can we hear a little more about that?
Hey, the book isn't out yet, so I can't talk to you about that. But Top 60 Over 60 was initiated because I'm hoping, I haven't done it yet, to hold events that are going to showcase older adults, older women, older men, depending on who sponsors or who wants to get involved, who are inspirational. Because frankly, I didn't have any great role models for aging, and we need more. So that was the initial reason why I named it Top 60 Over 60. We consult with businesses. We coach and train individuals and groups. We speak at conferences, TEDx talks, keynotes, and so on. And I do a lot of writing, publishing, and working on blogs and newsletters, and really a lot of research that I have the ability to translate into applicable knowledge because of my background in education. So I know all about learning and teaching, which isn't really the same. And that's what we do as an organization. We're a social enterprise. We're a for-profit social enterprise. So I welcome
and it sounds very needed and very, very good. And I think maybe even as more people come into this situation, they maybe want to contact you to get some help and how deciding how they're going to plan out their next
That's
25,
right.
30 years of life. I also want to throw this in the game before we get to your website, which is, I just want to invite my audience to consider this. If you are an entrepreneur, or even if you're just in this space where you want to learn from Helen, so that you've been thinking, well, what can I do for the next 25, 30 years of my life? Definitely reach out. Maybe she can help you. But I want to invite my other half of my viewing audience, which is in the 35 realm, that who may actually have businesses already, some sort of a business, and are looking for outside help or to hire an employee, to not discount the fact that a senior could be an excellent asset to your organization. We always think about hiring the youth and maybe they're cheaper or whatever, but there are plenty of seniors with a wealth of experience that could also be a huge asset to your organization. So I wanted to invite you to think outside the box and consider that as well. Now, we are almost at a time, Helen, so I have to just say, can you please share with us your website address and the rest of Helen's website and links and her business name and her social media links will be part of the description in the show notes. You can always check for that as well. But I'm going to ask you to say it here now too. Just your website, please.
Thank you. It's www.top60over60, all written out in letters, no numbers, .com, top60over60.com. And
okay, so we're out of time for today. So I want to thank you so much for joining me, Helen, and I want to thank you guys for being with us today. Again, this is the new series, Janette's TV's Instagram live short. You can follow me on Instagram. The Instagram link will be below, and see these new series. These are special series featuring coaches, consultants, book authors, and speakers, just to inspire you guys as an extra outside of the regular Janette's TV and Janette's TV podcast. Thanks so much for sharing your time with us today. Bye for now.